symptoms, what to do if you are part of a trial with vaccination, etc. So if you do get the call up, make sure that you contact the people who are the organisers of the trial you've been in and take their advice, because they'll be anticipating these sorts of inquiries. They'll have a policy in place for what you should do and how you should go about responding to your call up for your vaccine, because what you don't want to do is to mess up the trial if you're in one, or prejudice the trial in some way. So make sure you talk to the people. There will be a contact number on the information guidance leaflet given to all patients enrolled in trials, what to do under those circumstances or who to contact. You go to that contact person or their website. This will be a frequently asked question. There'll be some information about it there, so take some advice on from the people on whatever trial you're in.
I told you he knew his stuff. Dr. Chris Smith is with us for another half an hour. He's a virologist at Cambridge University, expert on vaccines. Any questions you may have, join the queue. 0345 6060 973. The time now is 6:30. Tim Humphrey has the headlines.
Another 20 million people are facing the toughest coronavirus rules in England. From midnight, the Midlands, the North East, North West and South West will enter the strictest alert level. The government confirmed the majority of primary schools in England will reopen as planned next week, but the Education Secretary has announced secondaries will be given a week's delay to put COVID testing in place. Boris Johnson signed the UK's trade deal, which has been agreed with the EU and comfortably passed through the House of Commons earlier. The Lords are now debating it. The weather, rain and sleet clearing away from southeast England tonight. Showers or longer spells of rain and sleet across the north and northwest before turn to snow over hills. Dry and cold elsewhere, a low of -4.
LBC into 2021. Thank you for listening to LBC for the last 12 months and to me every morning on Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Sat opposite me to take your calls, Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Good morning, Nick. I'm here on your show.
Called Sir Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, who joins me now.
This is my first day of freedom.
You celebrated by coming to see me.
2 weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, he supported me when he went on the Nick Ferrari show.
It's the start of call at the cabinet. One person who's been front and forward from the word go is the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock. I'll be back in the new year taking your calls for 2021.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
If you're looking for advice and tips on the big consumer issues, the place to be is the LBC Consumer Hour every Friday from 9 p.m.
You're listening to the LBC Consumer Hour with me, lawyer Dean Dunham.
Good evening. Thank you ever so much for taking my call. Good evening. Thanks for taking the call.
How can I help?
Join Dean Dunham for the LBC Consumer Hour every Friday evening from 9 with Which, the UK's consumer champion. Shop smarter with expert tips and advice.
Dine in this new year for just £15 for two of you. Enjoy a main, side, wine, plus a starter or dessert. Our best ever chicken Kiev, delicious Conte Prune Prosecco, and maybe a gastropub melt in the middle pudding. This is not just food, this is M&S food. All your M&S food departments are open. Over 18s only in selected stores only, T&C supply.
Cordell & Cordell wish families everywhere season's greetings and a happy and safe new year. The coronavirus pandemic and resulting social restrictions are likely to affect family plans this festive season. For men involved in separation or divorce, possibly one they didn't choose, this situation becomes even more challenging. At Cordell & Cordell, our focus is on helping men in matters related to divorce. Available via phone, video call or in person, conveniently located in Canary Wharf, Watford and Central London. Visit cordellcordell.co.uk, a partner men can count on.
This year, I want to do less and more. Smoking weakens our lungs, making it harder to breathe and leaving us more vulnerable to infections. January is the perfect time to quit. And quitting helps you feel better, save money and breathe easier. For free NHS support to quit smoking and to download the app, search Smoke Free. Better health. Let's do this.
Ian Payne on LBC.
Yes, we're talking to Dr. Chris Smith, a expert in vaccines, virologist at Cambridge University. More from him in just a second. 0345 6060 973. Laz says, did I hear correctly about egg allergies for the BioNTech vaccine? I'm allergic to eggs. No, I think you heard wrong. You can't really have the flu vaccine, but you can have the coronavirus vaccines, both of them. Let's go to Gianna, who's in Haynell in London. We're through to Dr. Chris Smith. Gianna.
Hello, I have a question regarding very, very sick patients. My husband is one who's been in a induced coma and is on a ventilator. Is there any way this drug can be administered
him all the best, and yourself.
Thank you. Yeah.
The answer is these are vaccines, and vaccines are all about preventing infection. They're rarely, not never, but only rarely used to try to ward off an infection once exposure has occurred. There are a few examples where we can give a vaccine right on top of someone being exposed to a particular thing, and sometimes that can stop a person becoming infected with that thing. But on the whole, vaccines are much better and much more effective when used well ahead of any kind of exposure. So they're not considered part of our treatment of people who are in acute states like your partner. And at this stage, supportive therapy, in some cases things like the antibody therapies that Donald Trump was given. There are some drugs which are being explored as possible drugs that can help change the outcome in people with severe coronavirus. But it's thought that by the time people end up in a state where they have to go to intensive care, they have to have ventilation and so on, this is thought to be an overreaction by the immune system. It's where, for some reason, we don't understand why, but in a small minority of people who catch this, the immune system fails to control the virus acutely. When it does that, it becomes frustrated, for want of a better phrase, and it goes into the immune equivalent of a tailspin, and it starts spitting out loads of immune signals that then recruit more immune big guns to the site of the action. And this intensifies the immune maelstrom, and you get damage being done now not by virus, but by inflammation. And that inflammation is then trafficked to all parts of the body. It can affect the kidneys, liver, pancreas, the bone marrow, and the brain. It goes everywhere. In the heart, 1 in 5 people can
Yeah,
get heart
it's
problems.
hard also. They
And as a consequence of that, it's all about trying to rein in the inflammation and keep a person well while they do that, which is why the steroid dexamethasone is being given to many people in that sort of situation. It can reduce the mortality rate by up to 30%, which is a big deal. And that was discovered by the recovery trial pioneered by the University of Oxford earlier this year.
How long has your husband been ill, Gina?
He was like to get to hospital Saturday a week ago, 2 o'clock in the morning, and he's been in intensive care since, I think, Sunday, and then he went, and then they put him under a day or two ago.
So what is
That's it. I have spoken to him already.
Well, look, we all wish you the very best. And,
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I miss you too, Gal. You're really great.
good. Well, hopefully we're giving it a little bit of an intelligent spin with Dr. Chris Smith, who's a virologist at Cambridge University and expert in vaccines, presented the Naked Scientist podcast as well. Let's have a look here. Let's go to Ben Kentish, our Westminster correspondent, just for a second to break away from talking about the vaccine and check in with Ben about the parliamentary progress on the Brexit trade bill. It got absolutely the thumbs up, unanimously almost in the Commons. It's gone to the Lords. What's the latest, Ben?
Still in the Lords, Ian, and it could be for quite some time. Last I checked, there are 130 or so peers wanting to speak in that debate on the Brexit bill, so it could go on a while yet, possibly even as late as 11 p.m, possibly even later than that, in fact. All that means is going to be, I'm afraid, for Her Majesty, a bit of a late night, because she is poised, waiting on call to sign that law when it does pass. That law, that bill into law, to give it what we call royal assent, and then it will be on the statute book. It will be law. It could be in the early hours of tomorrow, which is of course the last day before this law comes into effect. The trade deal is in effect from Saturday. Sorry, from Friday. Your Friday, the 1st of January. So it's very last minute. Her Majesty may not fully appreciate being kept up, but I think given the way the Lords is going, debate rumbling on, she may well.
Are you serious? She has to stay up. Surely she'll go to bed and they can just wake her up whenever.
I think she may get woken up either way. I think she's going to have a slightly disrupted night. It depends how late it goes on, doesn't it? If it's 12 p.m, you would probably expect she would stay up. She's at Windsor Castle. The law will somehow be conveyed over there, probably digitally, and she will sign it, and then it will go into law. But yes, if it drags on till 3 a.m, you would have thought Her Majesty may want a few hours sleep before she is rudely awoken in order to sign this into law.
It's going to be Series 7, I think, of the Crown. Thank you very much indeed, Ben. That's Ben Kentish, our Westminster correspondent. Right, let us go back to Dr. Chris Smith, virologist at Cambridge University, answering your questions until 7 o'clock on the vaccine, both of them. David is in Newham. You're through to Dr. Chris Smith.
Good evening. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Dr. Smith.
Hi, David.
A very specific question. My mother contracted encephalitis back in the 1950s. Subsequently, she had a vaccine when my parents were about to go on holiday in the 1960s, and she basically went back and had encephalitis again. The doctor at the time said that because she was bitten by a monkey that gave her the encephalitis in the first place, there was something used in the vaccine from monkeys back then that basically triggered it off again, and she was told that she could never have any vaccines, including a flu vaccine. She has a letter that's now obviously nearly 50 years old that says that, but I wondered if that's still the case, or are the way vaccines made changed now, so she's now safe to have a vaccine?
Goodness me, what a story. Thank you for sharing that. Some vaccines were, and some still are, made using monkey kidney cells. They're grown in the laboratory on those cells for no reason other than these cells have been passaged or grown in the lab for many, many years, and they're made from stocks of cells. It's not like you go and murder monkeys just to grow bits of them in laboratories. We just grow cells in the dish. So there is a theoretical possibility that some vaccines may still have those sorts of derivatives in them. But the good news here is Pfizer's vaccine is made entirely in the test tube, and there are no cells involved at all. And so I would think there were very few contraindications there that would cause this sort of thing. And if also she has flu vaccines, which are not grown in cells, they're grown in monkey cells, they're grown in eggs, and she has those okay, I would say vaccines seem to be okay in her. And because Pfizer's vaccine is not grown in anything, it's made in a test tube, that should be absolutely fine too. But this is not a replacement, obviously, for checking in with her own physician.
She was told back then that she was never allowed to have even a flu vaccine. She's not had any vaccinations in her life since then.
Yeah, I think things have moved on a bit since the 1950s, and if she is severely vulnerable, then there's a theoretical risk posed by a vaccine recipe she's never encountered versus a very real risk from catching coronavirus and being vulnerable to it and having the consequences. I think having a conversation with somebody who's familiar with her case, who can weigh up the pros and cons and then advise accordingly, is a really good step to take.
Excellent, David. Good luck. Thank you very much, and good luck to your mother as well. Mark would like to know, Chris, how long is the vaccine effective for once you've been successfully immunised against COVID?
Mark has asked the question I absolutely never could answer on the show, and it's the critical one, and we don't know the answer because no one has a time machine, because we can only explore this at the rate at which time ticks forward, and we've only had the vaccines for a matter of months, we've only had coronavirus circulating for a matter of a year or so, and therefore we don't know the long term, and we're still learning both the long-term protection you get from catching coronavirus for real, we think that's quite short-lived, maybe 6 months or so, and how that compares with the protection conferred by having the vaccine. The vaccine antibody response is orders of magnitude, as in hundreds to potentially thousands of times more powerful in terms of antibodies generated than catching coronavirus itself, and there are various reasons for that. But just because you make lots of antibodies does not translate into a response that will persist for a long time. It might do, but we just don't know. So at the moment, that experiment is ongoing, where people are having the vaccine, they'll be followed up to see how the level of antibodies is sustained in those people, and that will give us some idea as to the likely long-term protection and what the likely update frequency, in other words, coming in, going back and revaccinating people again, if we're going to have to, what that likely frequency will be.
And now, Christian, I would imagine is on many people's minds, particularly those who are not absolutely sure yet whether they're going to have the vaccine if offered. Mike from Hackney says, how can anyone know if there are no side effects that will appear in the long term?
Well, obviously there are always risks, and you could say the same thing about catching coronavirus, which of course some people now are discovering, unpleasantly enough, does have a sting in the tail with long COVID. So you could argue that not having the vaccine and getting long COVID, you're gambling with your chances of that too. The evidence we have is that most of these vaccines tend to produce effects acutely if they're going to. The number numbers are very, very low indeed, and the side effects are very, very trivial. They're really feeling a bit achy where the injection was, maybe a headache, bit of a temperature, a fever, bit off colour for a day or so afterwards, and then absolutely fine. Older people, far fewer of those side effects than younger people. The longer term side effects, we don't know. Is the frank answer to that, because again, we don't have a time machine, and people are going to be pursuing this aggressively, especially among, for instance, healthcare workers, many of whom are being prioritised for vaccination now. We'll be able to follow those up very closely indeed for obvious reasons, and they're healthcare workers, so they're going to be knowing what to look out for. Plus, here's a plus point for the AstraZeneca vaccine. Although this is a new vaccine against coronavirus, the foundation, the platform it's built upon, was developed years ago, and it's actually been used in many, many contexts since, including in the fight against Ebola. So this vaccine construct, instead of having a bit of coronavirus in it, had a bit of Ebola virus in it most recently, and was used in thousands of people in West Africa to protect them against Ebola. So we actually have long-term follow-up of what this vaccine construct does in thousands of people for a long period of time, including thousands of people who therefore would potentially have had a high frequency of HIV because of the geography in which it was used. So that gives us reassurance about safety on many, many levels, including ethnicity as well.
Brilliant. Dr. Chris Smith, virologist at Cambridge University, is here for another 15 minutes to take your calls, text, tweets and emails. It's 6:45. Tim Humphrey has the headlines.
3/4 of England's population will be under the toughest coronavirus restrictions as another 20 million people are moved into Tier 4 at midnight. The return of secondary school pupils in England is being delayed by a week to allow COVID testing programmes to be put in place. MPs have voted overwhelmingly in favour of the government's post-Brexit trade deal. And the weather, rain and sleet clearing away from southeast England. Showers or longer spells of rain and sleet across the north and northwest will turn to snow over hills, dry and cold elsewhere, a low of -4.
LBC Travel, I'm Katie Tyler in East Ham. It's very slow on Barking Road on both approaches to Wall End Road. It's because of an accident and the road is partially blocked. Delays in Richmond on Lower Richmond Road between Richmond Circus and Manor Circus. The road is partially blocked because of emergency repairs taking place. And in the centre of town, Oxford Street is shut westbound between Charing Cross Road and Berners Street. That's for repairs taking place too. On the trains, no trains running to or from King's Cross. And on the tubes, no district line running between Turnham Green and Ealing Broadway.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Natasha Devon.
More areas of the UK have been put into higher tiers, with 78% of us now in Tier 4. How has this news affected you?
Natasha Devon on LBC.
COVID-19 remains highly contagious, and even people without symptoms can spread it. So we need to keep washing our hands when we get to work, keep wearing our face coverings in shops, keep making space when we're out and about. Morning. And now we're indoors more, we should let fresh air in to help blow COVID-19 particles away. Let's keep doing all we can to protect each other and help stop the spread. Remember, hands, face, space, and let fresh air in.
Dine in this new year for just £15 for 2 of you. Enjoy a main, side, wine, plus a starter or dessert. Our best ever chicken Kiev, delicious Conte Pruny Prosecco, and maybe a gastropub melt in the middle pudding. This is not just food, this is M&S food. All your M&S food departments are open. For 18s only, selected stores only, T&C supply.
It's stuck.
But you know what to do. It's lift and pull. Lift and pull, lift and pull.
Oh, for pity's sake, all I want is a teaspoon.
Kitchen causing you a little house embarrassment? At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready. And now there's up to 50% off showroom kitchen units. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. For more information and to book your free design appointment, visit wix.co.uk.
It's fair to say it hasn't been a great year for the hospitality sector. Looking at the finances, the numbers tell a story. It's easy to see with Xero accounting software, especially when it comes to payroll. I just flick my eye over it, click OK, and pensions and PAYE are all done automatically. Xero really does help us businesses. They've even given me a spot on the radio. Hi, I'm Dan Capper from the Old Hauling.
Manage your account easily with Xero. Visit xero.com.
2020's nearly over. That's worth popping a cork for. At Morrison's, Charles de Villa's champagne is now only $9.99 a bottle. That's half price. Morrison's, making New Year's special. Majority of stores subject to availability. Online varies. Was
£20 ends 1st of January. Please drink responsibly.
At Filippo Berio Olive Oil, our master blenders never stop until they find the perfect flavor worthy of our founder's signature that you will still see on every bottle. Filippo Berio, his signature, our promise. Find us at your supermarket today.
The government's message is to stay at home, only travel if you must, stay local and reduce the number of journeys you make. If you do need to travel, please walk or cycle whenever possible. Please remember, you must wear a face covering over your nose and mouth at all times on public transport, unless you are exempt. Rest assured, our enhanced cleaning regime is making the network cleaner than ever. There are also directions around stations to help with social distancing. Check before you travel. Search TfL Journey Planner. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Right now at your local co-op, get a bottle of our delicious irresistible Prosecco for just £7. Now all you need is a great reason to celebrate. To a great year ahead. Co-op is what we do. Subject to availability, see participating stores for details. Offer ends 1st of January 2021. Please drink responsibly.
Feel Pain on LBC.
Right, let's make the most of the 10 minutes left with Dr. Chris Smith, virologist at Cambridge University. A couple of calls in just a second, Chris. A couple of texts first of all. Because the AstraZeneca virus originally comes from a flu virus in chimpanzees, it is presumably not right for vegans. How about that one?
Okay, first of all, it's not a flu virus, it's what's called a chimpanzee adenovirus. It's called ChAdOx1, and it's a cold virus. And it's not actually coming from the animal. The virus is there as its own entity, and in fact there is no animal in there. It's just the virus on its own. It depends whether vegans object to virus vaccines that have been grown on cells in culture, and I don't know, I'm not a vegan, I don't know if that would